The night Grandma shot Shorty. When I was a boy, we kept a loaded pistol in the house with which to dispatch criminals who might come prowling around late at night. We never killed any criminals with the pistol, but there was one near fatality. Unfortunately, the victim was not a criminal, at least so far as we knew. The caliber of the pistol was very large, at least 45, maybe 50, and magnum to boot. The pistol could put a hole in you the size of a grapefruit if you were a criminal trying to force your way into our house late at night. At least that's what I told the guys at school. What I didn't tell them was that the gun was a figment of my mother's imagination. My father had died when I was 6, leaving me the lone male in a family of women, my mother and grandmother, and a sister who was 6 years older than I. If I have never become too excited over women's liberation, it's because I grew up surrounded by liberated females, all tough, hard, and fearless. Any one of them could have taught a graduate course in assertiveness training. My sister held a black belt in aggravation. Our farm was situated about a mile from the railroad, and it was not unusual for tramps to stop by and ask if they could chop some wood in exchange for a meal. My mother, bless her heart, never once turned away a tramp unfed. But boy, did those suckers chop wood. There were no free handouts at the McManus farm. Even with all the tramps drifting into our place, staggering away 3 hours later with a bologna sandwich clutched limply in a hand, Mother never saw any need for a gun as a means of self-protection. After all, she viewed the tramps as harmless, easy-going fellows who, if spoken to with a proper measure of firmness, were capable of chopping a good deal of wood. Then one day Mom went into town and hired 3 local criminals to build an extension onto the chicken house. When they were about half done with the project, she saw they had no skill as carpenters, paid them off, and sent them packing. "We'll get you for this," one of the criminals, a mean little man called Shorty, yelled back over his shoulder. "Ha!" Mom responded. The threat, however, caused some concern among the rest of the family. What would we do if Shorty came sneaking back in the middle of the night, intent on murdering us all? "Oh, all right," Mom said. "Here's what we'll do." She explained that if we heard any strange noises outside at night, or someone banged on the door, my sister would sing out loud and clear, "Do you want the gun, Ma? Do you want the gun?" To which my mother would loudly reply, "Oh, you'd better give it to me, but be careful, it's loaded." This system worked rather well. Not only did the imaginary pistol frighten off any criminals making strange noises outside our house, but it gave several innocent late-night visitors a bad case of the shakes. In fact, the imaginary pistol turned out to be more deadly than any of us expected. One night my mother was sitting up alone playing a game of solitaire, when suddenly there was a banging on the door. Mom, who never thought the imaginary pistol was necessary in the first place, got up and answered the door without bothering to wait for my sister to sound the alarm. The visitor turned out to be a diminutive young fellow by the name of Little Ernie, and he had a terrible tale of woe to tell. He had joined the Civilian Conservation Corps that summer and had been working with a CCC crew back in the mountains, eradicating blister rust. Somehow little Ernie had managed to antagonize the rest of the crew, and they had taken him down and shaved off all his curly blonde hair. He had left the camp in a huff, his cowboy hat wobbling loosely atop his ears. As he recited the story to Mom, his voice rose and fell, quavering with rage. He also refused to remove his hat to allow Mom to survey the damage. In that time and place, it was considered the ultimate rudeness for a man to wear his hat in the house. This was to be a contributing factor in the misunderstanding shortly to follow. After one last outburst of rage, little Ernie pounded the table with his fist. Mom was getting tired of hearing about the atrocity, and she told Ernie he could spend the night in the spare upstairs bedroom. She then went off to bed herself, neglecting in all the excitement to mention to Ernie that another upstairs bedroom was occupied by my Aunt Gladys, who was visiting, and Graham. When the banging on the front door had first sounded, Aunt Gladys and Graham had sat bolt upright in bed. Soon they heard a loud male voice full of rage and incoherence. "It's Shorty," Graham hissed to Aunt Gladys, who had been told about the threat. Aunt Gladys went pale, and her hair tightened in its curlers. "We'd better go help Mabel," she whispered. They listened a bit longer to the mad ravings rising from the living room, when they heard the dull sounds of blows being delivered. "Oh no, he's killed her," Graham gasped, after a period of silence broken only by the tinny rattle of hair curlers. They heard booted feet begin to ascend the stairs. "Oh," Aunt Gladys whispered, "now he's coming for us." Through the open door of their bedroom, Gram and Aunt Gladys had an unobstructed view of the stairwell. Thump, thump, thump came the booted steps. Given their emotional state, it was perhaps understandable that Gram and Aunt Gladys would mistake the slow plodding on the steps to be a result of stealth rather than weariness and nervous exhaustion. Slowly the crown of a cowboy hat rose above the edge of the stairwell, a sure sign the intruder was a killer. No one else would wear a hat in the house. Then the head and shoulders came into view. There was only one thing to do. Gram drew the imaginary pistol. Employing the tone of voice she reserved for breaking up dogfights and ordering the family hog out of her flower gardens, she let little Ernie have it. "Hold it right there, Shorty," she snarled, "or I'll blow your head off." 3 days later, little Ernie had recovered enough to be ready and willing to go back to the CCC camp. By then, if he held a cup in both hands, he could get it to his lips without sloshing coffee all over himself. Much of his color had returned, too, since the stubble of his hair had leaped up half an inch when he heard Gram's command. He now looked as if he had a crew cut, although it was somewhat lighter in shade than his original blonde curls. We never saw little Ernie again, so I don't know if he ever fully recovered. Perhaps he was still peeved at Gram, thinking that by calling him Shorty she had been referring to his modest stature. Mom got rid of the pistol soon after that. She said it was too dangerous to have lying around the house, where a young boy or an old lady might get a hold of it and accidentally kill somebody.